You know what we do in this classroom is cover the news. Monday, November 4th, the election right around the corner. The markets are shifting. Are they overreacting? Why are they reacting? Well, over the weekend, not much happened, but there was a New York Times Siena College poll that all of a sudden shows Kamala Harris winning in all the swing states. Guess she'll be your next president. Well, you know what I think about the polls. I've been saying the same thing. I wouldn't change my mind now about polling. And I would not change my mind based on one singular poll released at the last minute. That's me, not the betting/investing market at Polymarket. And so we're seeing people sell their shares, and Polymarket, in many cases, is showing Kamala becoming the next president based on who's buying and selling shares. Now, let's take our mind and put it into the mind of an investor or better. Let's say you bought shares at Trump at 47 cents on the dollar, or 47%. He got as high as almost 70. So let's just say 50 to 70. Well, let's say you bought at 50 cents and you decided, I can ride this out, cash out at 100%. So a 50-cent bet pays me $1 if he wins, or I can sell now, take my money and run. And so you see a lot of people say, better cash out now, take my money and run. So you bought for 50 cents, 1,000 shares, you then turn around and sell them at 70 cents. So you made 20 cents per share, not a bad deal. But then, if you're really smart, you think, what am I doing? I'm overreacting to one single poll. The reason I bet in the initial part was I don't trust the polls. Why should I trust the polls now? So now he drops back down, you buy back in, and you ride it to the top. That could be possibly one of the way the investors are working. We'll talk more about this data and possible data manipulation in a second, but there was one poll that came out, and there was a major overreaction in the market, major overreaction in the public. But who did not overreact? The stock market, the investors with billions of dollars who shaped their portfolios over the last couple of weeks towards the Trump presidency, they're still confident. They have internal data that you don't have. They have internal data that the media probably doesn't have or doesn't want to discuss. They still believe the Trump presidency is happening. Atlas Intel, the best polling agency out of 2020, predicts, although be it close, a Trump victory. All of them are within the margin of error almost, so it could swing either way based on turnout, and turnout's going to be a big deal, who shows up. But Atlas Intel, during a very difficult election in 2020, very difficult to poll, with some people being at home, some people not being at home, some people more willing to answer phones, different voting rules in different states. Either way, Atlas Intel was the most successful in 2020, and here they are predicting a Trump presidency again. Now, there's a more nefarious theory about these suspicious polls and the messaging that is going out through legacy media or corporate media or your old school MSNBC, Fox types of media that's designed supposedly to inform the public. And that idea is that these polls and the messaging that's going across over the weekend is designed to depress Republicans, turn them into doomers, thus suppressing their vote. If Republicans believe, we're losing in the polls, we lost all of our advantage, why even bother? Well, it all comes down to turnout. Now, so far, turnout has heavily favored Republicans with the internal, it's not internal data. We can see the early voting data that shows that the Republicans are doing quite well and that the Democrats are not turning out. But possibly this could, on election day, convince some Republican voters not to show up. Now, that's more of a nefarious conspiracy theory. Don't want to get too far down in the rabbit hole, but we also do have to remember that the media has misled/lied us into wars in the past over the last century. They have misled or lied to us about various hoaxes involving former presidents. They have lied about the laptop that wasn't real, that, by the way, actually it was real. So you have to be careful with legacy media. Thankfully, Elon Musk bought Twitter, allows for freedom of speech, and we have independent media today that also informs the public. You don't have to completely rely on MSNBC, NBC, Fox, old legacy corporate media controlled by corporate interests, advertisement dollars. You have independent journalists whose sole purpose is to inform the public rather than persuade the public, rather than make a filthy rich living. It is up for you to decide. We'll discuss this more in our Unit 3 politics when we discuss the media, their role in informing the public, and whether they fill that role or not, whether sometimes they serve corporate interests, maybe they also serve to influence power structures. So let's look at some of these independent results. We've got one tweet here that shows the Pennsylvania race and how Kamala actually pulled ahead in the betting market. Again, people overreact to the singular New York Times poll, and we see the individual market of Pennsylvania shift, with people selling and all these people jumping in and saying, oh, she's got a chance, I'm buying Kamala, based on one poll. Maybe not the wisest investment strategy. Maybe you need to stick to your guns and trust the research that you have been doing all along. But again, these are markets. They are human beings. They are gambling. There is risk involved. And we see it get really close. And people have panicked this weekend. But as one guy points out, in this much smaller market of Pennsylvania, which only has 23 million on it, rather than the national betting, which we looked at before, where Trump was a little bit ahead, where you have almost $1 billion worth of volume. It's a smaller market. And in a smaller market, it can be swayed quite easily by people who are just making bets or maybe possibly manipulating markets to manipulate public belief and public sentiment. A lot of different theories. And we can see here this guy, who's basically the same guy, all of a sudden over the weekend bought $25,000 worth, $26,000 worth, all within a matter of a second, which will sway a smaller market like this, which will change the perspective of what is going on. Now, did this person do this to manipulate the market? It's up for you to decide. Or do they truly believe, I'm buying in on Harris right now and she's going to win? That is one of the issues and concerns that you run into with betting markets. So polls can't be trusted, not the best predictor. Betting markets are also not infallible. They are not perfect. They're just another tool to use to make predictions. And we can look closer. Again, going back to polls. Again, independent media reminding us, informing us. Legacy media doesn't always do this. They almost never tell us, oh, hey, by the way, our polls are wrong. But down here, we have the independent media reminding us, informing the public, doing their job about how these polls work. And I'm not going to read all the text to you. We'll just go over it real quick in graphic form. But it is simply the fact that the polls are wrong. You can read the text on the screen. Just pause it and you can read. Polls are wrong and how much off they are. And then he also discusses the fact that we have data right now showing turnout. And the GOP and Republicans are turning out. The Democrats are not. So you want to trust polls, or do you want to trust the actual turnout data that we have so far? And then up here we have, again, another thing media not mentioning, the legacy media not discussing, was that the latest polls on November 3rd had, again, Trump winning. And here is that data that this guy was discussing and shows you specifically how wrong they got it. I think the biggest part was, if you look at the New York Times Siena poll from 2020, now this is the poll this year, New York Times Siena 2024, that shook the world this weekend. Oh my gosh, she's going to win. The New York Times Siena poll says it. Well, the New York Times Siena poll missed in 2020 in favor of Democrats 90% of the time. So there they are this year. She's going to win. Aren't you the guys that got it wrong 90% of the time? So if we go back to 2020, they say Biden's going to win by 9 overall. He won by 4.5. Again, that typical 4.5 to 5% margin. That was national. We look state by state. The New York Times said Biden's got Arizona by 6. He barely won by 0.3. Well, he's got Florida by 3. Trump actually ended up winning 3.3. Wait, are you off about 5 or 6 again? Yeah. They got Georgia right, give them credit, but then they missed Michigan. Oh, yeah, Michigan's in the bag for Biden. He's up 8 points. He won by 2.8. Pretty good on Minnesota. Not surprised. Biden's going to win North Carolina by 3. He lost by 1.3. Whoops. Ohio is going Biden. You were off by almost 9 points. Trump won by 8.2. So this is the New York Times poll, folks. They had a really bad last poll in 2020. So here is their final poll in 2024. Nothing has changed, but we'll see. In the end, it comes down to turnout. If people show up on Tuesday, that party will win. If the Democrats turn it around and rally the troops, maybe the weekend's news will fire people up and get people to show up to the polls. Or maybe the Republicans don't show up. It all comes down to this. But I will leave with this. Do you overreact to one singular poll? Do you overreact to a legacy media information? Or do you trust the research? Do you trust the intrinsic data that you've been looking at? Do you trust what you have seen with your eyes over the last couple months or years? You can look at all those data and then you can make a prediction on your own. Or you can just say, whatever, let's just vote and please get this over with. That's your news.